Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now you really have to admire the Disney company's ability to make money. Not just in purchasing incredible brands, so that they really created a Disney empire at this point, but to give the fans what they want, and they can be very fast on their feet if they want to be. For instance, Frozen has been doing quite well at the box office. Every week I highlight in Movie Math how that film continues to impress. Now, this past weekend it dropped to number 5 after being Frozen at the top of the box office for the first 8 weeks of its release. But look for it to pop up again as Disney is very cleverly releasing a sing-along version. Yes, it was announced yesterday that Disney is rushing it into theaters on January 31st. That's just like a week from Friday, and it'll be very smart because it only has to go up against Labor Day and That Awkward Moment. Films that aren't in that demographic anyway, and neither one is, I think, a huge audience pleaser. So if people want to go to the theaters, they very well might say, well, let's see Frozen one more time and sing along. Now, I know a lot of people probably already were singing along. I know some of you have seen it multiple times. I believe someone wrote even like 13 or something in the comments when I asked how many times people had seen Frozen. But I think that this is just another way for Disney to get you to see it again. It's just like all sing-along versions. It'll have the words at the bottom. And they'll also have like a bouncing snowflake so you can sing along correctly with the music. And also yesterday, Disney released a video here on YouTube. I'll put a link to it in the video description of Elsa singing Let It Go in 25 different languages. They run the gamut of all the different dubs that have been done for the film globally. And of course, and the original Let It Go clip that they've posted has almost 50 million views. And I think this just continues to speak to what a phenomenon Frozen is, and that Disney is trying to serve that fan base, which I think is very admirable. So if you are a Frozen fan, Disney knows that you're out there, and unlike some other movie properties that I think the fans don't get the attention that they would like, or the appreciation, Disney realizes they have something very special here with Frozen. And again, I've asked you guys before how many tickets you've bought for it and such, but I really want to know, why do you think that Frozen is such a phenomenon? Why do you think that it's probably going, domestically it's made more than The Desolation of Smaug. It's made more than Man of Steel. It's made, more than Thor, World War Z, all these movies. And globally, it's really on track to maybe reach the $1 billion club. And I believe it would be the first animated movie to do that since Toy Story 3. So I think we all understood Toy Story 3's success because it was the third film. It really built on nostalgia, and everybody wanted to go see it. They had promised it would be the last one, even though we now know that's probably not the case. But I'm just curious because I had a lot of story problems with Elsa. I've been keeping an eye on this project. It came to my attention that Elsa was originally supposed to be the villain of the film. One of you had forwarded me a piece, another article that led to that article, and it talked about how Elsa was originally supposed to be the villain, but when they heard the song Let It Go, they realized it was so compelling and would be a lot more sympathetic if a non-villain was singing it. So that's why you might notice that some of the lines might seem a little callous for Elsa. And also I think that maybe speaks to some of the scripting problems, that maybe it was a last-minute fix. So they were like, wait a minute, Elsa should not be the villain. She should be a misunderstood hero that her sister has to save, a victim, really. And I think that's been a very powerful message from what I've seen from people's responses in the coverage of the film. But it would explain major storytelling problems and the fact that Elsa is not very well defined. However, that's allowed people to fill in a lot of the blanks for themselves. So Disney will have to tread very lightly going forward when they try to better define Elsa, because so many people have made her their own. So that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day, also from Disney, they have so many properties, they dominate all the headlines, but they're continuing with their live-action fairy tales, as we all know. They have Maleficent coming out later this year, that horrible trailer that came out that I think shook us all to the core and made us question whether or not this is something we want to see. But they have also Into the Woods for Christmas. They have the Cinderella remake in 2015, but they're still moving forward on this new Alice in Wonderland. And I'm very excited about that because while I know a lot of you guys, a lot of people in general didn't like Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, I adored it. I thought it was really spectacular filmmaking. So I'm very curious to see them move forward. Now, I'm disappointed that Tim Burton won't be returning. Mia Wasikowska as Alice and Johnny Depp will be returning as the Mad Hatter. They will both be back. But James Bobin from the Muppets, the first, I believe he was also directing the second Muppet film, but he directed the Muppet films. He's from Flight of the Conchords. He'll be directing this film. I talked about this in another Morning Movie News. Just really quickly again to reiterate, I have problems with I have some concerns that Bobin doesn't have the experience he needs with special effects to be able to really make the powerhouse film necessary. And also, I think Tim Burton, he's very gimmicky a little bit with his filmmaking, but I think he has a really good understanding of character development and heart and, really making something that's very appealing emotionally. I think you can really feel that Burton's films are very emotional, and I think it's one of his highlights as a filmmaker. So I don't really know if Bobin is going to be able to get that emotional pull that I think would be necessary to make, I think all epic films need to have the fun factor, the special effects factor, but they need that emotional underline. I mean, I think Frozen mostly has an emotional underline, which is why it works so well. And Gravity to some degree too. I feel Gravity is somewhat manipulative, but I don't want to get onto that again. But, I think that, look at James Cameron's films with both Avatar and Titanic. Again, huge emotional hooks, which were quite effective at the box office. So if you're a screenwriter and you're trying to think of a project, get that emotional hook. So anyway, the big news, the reason this has popped up in the news again, is that it looks like Bobin is getting his Ali G star, because Bobin directed some episodes of Ali G back in the day, Sacha Baron Cohen, to potentially play the villain or the antagonist in this sequel, which will be called Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass. That's a great title. I think it's very indicative of Lewis Carroll's work. I think it takes it more in that direction and a little bit further away from the Disney version. I think this new Alice, I really liked it, as I said, and I think it really creates its own universe. But I think Sacha Baron Cohen is an interesting choice. He's very Helena Bonham Carter, so I can see where they're coming from that. And he's worked with Depp before in Sweeney Todd, the Barber of Fleet Street, Demon Barber of Fleet Street. That was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it, but it did very poorly at the box office. Sacha Baron Cohen is really not a big box office draw at this point. I mean, of course, obviously Borat was a huge success, but that was really, a flash in the pan and something he hasn't been able to duplicate. And his roles, now granted, he hasn't really had a major role, and he hasn't had a major role in like a straight narrative. I mean, everything he's been doing has been, his like comedic kind of films, with trying to, get people, on candid camera, stuff like that. He hasn't really starred in anything or had a really huge role in an actual movie. So this would be an interesting choice for him. It would be a safe choice because it's going to do pretty well, obviously, because people will want to see this film, and hopefully enough time has passed from the first Alice in Wonderland that they'll give it a shot. But I do feel I would have some concern that with Depp, and Depp, who I think is on the line with audiences, he really has to prove himself again. Mia Wasikowska on the line, Sacha Baron Cohen, very iffy, and then you have a property that I think at this point is a little iffy. So I feel that they should have had a little bit of a stronger casting choice there. So we'll see. But I think it's not. I don't think it's a good casting choice. It might be for creatively, but I think business-wise, it's a mistake. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day, this is an interesting one, and I saw a number of you asking me about it, and it kind of made a lot of waves because of its unusual nature. And the story is that Quentin Tarantino announced that because of the script leak for The Hateful Eight, the script that he had just written, a Western that was supposed to be kind of like an old dude's Western, and he wanted Christoph Waltz and Bruce Dern for the film, because it was leaked on the internet, he is not going to make it. He might publish the script kind of as a standalone for people to read, but he's not going to make it into a movie. And basically the story is that he gave it out to just a very few people. He says like 5. I believe one was Christoph Waltz, who's not even being associated with potentially being the source of the leak, which I think makes sense. I mean, Christoph Waltz owes everything to Tarantino, so he's not going to cross him. But the other people he gave it to a Django Unchained producer, Reggie Hudland, and he was pretty upset that Hudland let an agent come to his house and read the script. I mean, he didn't copy it, but Tarantino felt that was a breach of trust. And then he also gave it to Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, and Bruce Dern. And Tarantino was pretty convinced that it's the CIA agents for Dern that represent him here, that team that somehow leaked the script. They let everybody read it at the agency, someone copied it, and some people are saying it's really Tarantino's fault for not putting a watermark on it so that at least he could track the leak. Basically, a watermark makes it's almost impossible to copy the script pages, and if you do, it has like the person's name on it that it was given to. So clearly, if you leak it, everyone's like, well, I can see who this came from because their name's on it. It's a very, aggressive way to protect a script, but people have taken to doing that because of obvious reasons. Now, some of you also pointed out that this is a major ongoing problem. There were X-Men Days of Future Past script leaks recently, and then also this week, some major spoilerage for Batman Superman, for 2016. Some major plot points leaked about that. I don't know if they're true. This might just be like a rumor, but if it is true, they were very big plot points. I checked them out. I don't know. that film is so far away at this point. As I talked about on Morning Movie News the other day, it really is kind of a non-entity at this point. Really, I think all the energy's been taken out of it, but script leaks are becoming a major problem. Now, a lot of people said Tarantino was just being a big baby for scrapping this project and that he should have moved forward. But I have to say, I'm kind of with Tarantino on this one. I think that script leaks really take away a lot of the excitement of discovering a movie in theaters, just like I've talked before about how I think movies need to be more careful when they're shooting out in the open and making sure that nobody goes and takes set pictures and gives away major things. I think The Dark Knight Rises suffered hugely from that leak about Marion Cotillard and her Talia al Ghul getup. I think that really hurt the film. And I think that this is harmful to this movie. And I think that Tarantino has made such great projects and done such a good job. I love the current streak that he's on with Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained. I think they're just phenomenal films. And the fact that these people, his co-workers, wouldn't respect him enough, or there was some, hotshot jerk agent who was like, don't be so protective, Tarantino. I'm going to send this out to everybody. And they couldn't respect this man's wishes to keep it to themselves so that he could really try and maintain that experience of discovery in the theaters. It's just so offensive that I think it's not that Tarantino doesn't want to make the movie because his feelings are hurt, but I think he doesn't want to reward these people with the project. I think they were like, oh, we're going to be involved in this hot Tarantino movie, so we don't care. We're just going to go and brag about it and show everybody that we have the Tarantino script. I mean, it's just really is a betrayal of trust, and it's really taking advantage of Tarantino's reputation. And as I've talked about many times before on the show, as someone who writes, I write all the scripts for, this show, this channel. I've written comic books. I just feel that the written word, is for the creative person, it's all you have, your idea. It's very hard to keep those things under wraps. It's, intellectual property. That's why it's so devastating when someone steals that property and takes credit for your work. And I think, it's the same thing here. It's like he very, very, very much went out of his way to say, don't share this with anybody. And these people didn't care. Now, luckily, Bruce Dern, he's saying he's still in consideration for the film he's going to try and write next, a whodunit, a mystery, which I think would be interesting. So I'm glad Dern isn't being published for his agent's behavior. But I think that's pretty, CAA denies this, by the way, across the board. They're saying, we didn't leak it, it wasn't us, but someone leaked it. And I do think that I think even that producer, Reggie Hudlin, shouldn't have invited someone over to read that script. I think Hudlin was doing it to show off and to say he had the new script. And, Tarantino might not let you read it, but hey, I'll let you read it. We're pals and stick with me, be my friend. I'm your Tarantino in. And that's just, I think it's just really appalling. So I'm with Tarantino on that, actually. And I'm curious how you guys feel. If you wrote a script and you gave it to some close people and you asked them not to leak it, how would you feel? How do you think David Goyer feels and Zack Snyder that major plot points for their script are probably leaked right now? Those elements of surprise could be missing. So write your thoughts down below. All right, those are the 3 stories of the day. The viewer question comes from Paul Blake. Paul, I'm finally answering one of your questions. Paul Blake was very nice with Ann Seif the other day, about a few weeks ago. I talked about how someone said they were complaining that their question never got answered, and Paul Blake jumped in and said, don't take it personally. My question's never been answered either, and I thought that was very nice of Paul. So today I saw a question from Paul, and so I took the opportunity to answer it because I thought it was a good one. It's a fun and very interesting question. So Paul says, hey Grace, I have a question for you. Thanks for not giving up with the questions, Paul. He says, if you could only see one film in 2015, what would that film be and why? Excellent question. Not only is it a fun what-if game to play, but I really feel this might come into play literally in 2015 because of people's, limited movie-going budgets. There are just so many movies coming out in 2015. People aren't going to be able to see all of them in theaters. I'm assuming maybe people start saving now so they can, but people are going to have to start making these tough decisions, what to see in theaters or what to see first, what to give that #1 opening weekend and the other film you backburner to maybe see the next weekend. Or you might just go see a bunch of movies one weekend, who knows. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Now, it was a very tough decision for me. But I have to say, Warner Brothers made it a little easier by pushing Batman and Superman to 2016, and so I've picked Avengers 2: Age of Ultron. The reason is that I love the first film so much. It was my favorite film of that year to come out. I thought it perfectly captured the comic book reading experience, and I thought that all of Marvel's hard work in establishing those characters in their own standalone films really paid off. And I'm very curious to see what Joss Whedon will do next. Not only am I hopeful that he can repeat it, but I'm interested to see if he can repeat it. I'm also curious to see, I'm excited to see Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. They've really been keeping him under wraps. There are no current plans to give him his own film, and he was, I think, a huge fan favorite. And so this film heralds heralds his return. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this magic element, especially these rumors that Doctor Strange will be a major player in Phase 3. So I'm curious to see how Whedon's going to shift the focus from science to magic, especially since, as so many of you have pointed out, there was a big speech in Thor about how magic is really just science that still has yet to be explained. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen there. I think it's hugely anticipated. It's not only a situation of what's going to come next, but can it repeat the first film's success in terms of quality, fan interest, and also box office. The first one is the third highest grossing film of all time. Only James Cameron can beat it. So I'm very, very curious to see what's going to happen there, and I'm very excited. So that's the movie I would pick. Now, you might be wondering, why didn't I pick Star Wars? Well, my reasoning behind that is that, first of all, it's hard to get excited about a movie you know so little about. I've seen very little, and also I have to say, none of you seem that interested in Star Wars Episode 7. I pay attention to how videos do with certain topics to see, what's worth keeping an eye on, what you guys are interested in, to continue to follow up on that. And Star Wars does not generate a lot of interest. The Star Wars videos are not huge, which I find very surprising. Maybe when we start getting some genuine news, they'll start to pop up. But still, you guys are just not interested in Star Wars rumors, which I find fascinating. Also, I was so disappointed with what J.J. Abrams did with Star Trek Into Darkness. Just in my opinion, sloppy storytelling, and he relied so heavily on the original Star Trek universe, and by making Khan not a fully developed character, but just an offshoot of the original Khan. I was so disappointed. I mean, I know some of you liked that film quite a bit, but I had such major problems with, I felt, just poor filmmaking, that it made me kind of lose some faith in him as someone who can deliver with this new Star Wars. Now, obviously, Lawrence Kasdan is scripting, so I think I have more faith there because of that, but I'm just nervous. I don't, I liked the first Star Trek, in 2009 so much that if you had asked me about Star Wars after that, I would have been like, this is going to be amazing. But, now I'm concerned that J.J. Abrams, is just going to plug in, your original actors, Hamill, Ford, and Carrie Fisher, and just make it a big celebration movie, and just play into that nostalgia factor. And also, I'm hearing a lot about how it's going to be everybody's kids, and I personally have a problem with that. Just like I don't like movies that come up with the idea that all these superhero characters knew each other as children. They do that a lot with Superman. That was my big problem with Smallville. Everybody was in Smallville before they were in Metropolis, and I just find that really tough to swallow. And I have a hard time, considering continuing with the Star Wars universe, which is really just Star Wars: The Second Generation. I just, I'm not sure. That takes some of the fun out of it for me. So that's why I'll definitely want to see it. My other honorable mentions go to Fast 7. Brad Bird's Tomorrowland, very curious how that's going to turn out, and Ant-Man, because of the outside-of-the-box casting, and even their directing choice. I'm very curious what Edgar Wright's going to do with that. I thought the action sequences were the best part of Scott Pilgrim. A lot of Disney on there, that Disney company. They have every corner of Hollywood. All right, so what would be your top choice for 2015? If you could only see one movie, as Paul Blake asked, what would it be and why? Write your thoughts down below. Thank you for tuning in today's Morning Movie News, and let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions you might have. Thanks for watching.